The long-awaited successor to the X-H1 is finally here. Fujifilm has listened to the needs of hybrid shooters all across the world, and after much planning, consideration, engineering, and a little bit of magic, it's finally ready to be unveiled. And it's called the X-H2S. You heard right, this is an X series camera which uses all of the XF and XC lenses on the market, as well as a few other new ones I'll talk about in just a minute. First, let's get into some specs and then we'll talk about how it's used. It has a 26.1 megapixel APS-C X-Trans stacked BSI sensor, built-in in-body image stabilization for 7 stops of compensation, a 5.6 million dot OLED electronic viewfinder, a 3-inch 1.62 million dot vari-angle touchscreen, and now for the first time in a Fujifilm camera is the introduction of CF Express Type B media, alongside a UHS-2 SD card slot. You can shoot 40 frames per second in electronic shutter, 15 frames per second in mechanical shutter, and you can't forget that it also has AI subject detection. So that means heads, eyes, dogs, cats, and birds. For those of you shooting high burst for a long period of time, Fujifilm allows you to shoot 30 JPEGs per second or 20 RAW frames per second for over 1,000 frames on the buffer without slowing down. It uses the W235 battery with the option for 2 different battery grips. One is the regular battery grip that allows you to use 3 batteries at once, or for those of you using wireless tethering, you have the wireless transfer grip that also gives you an Ethernet port. For you hybrid shooters out there, you have not been left behind. The X-H2S allows you to shoot 6.2K up to 30 frames per second, 4K in DCI or UHD up to 120 frames per second, and HD video up to 240 frames per second. It has a full-size HDMI port, a USB-C port for data transfer and for quick battery charging, a 3.5mm headphone jack, and a 3.5mm microphone jack. If your video shoots require something more than the H.265 codec built in, you can also shoot up to 6.2K 30 frames per second in ProRes. That includes 422HQ, 422, and 422LT. That's right, you can shoot ProRes internally to the memory card. If you're on longer video shoots and you're worried about heat management, Fujifilm has an accessory fan that you can attach to the back of the camera. If your productions require a RAW video workflow, Atomos and Blackmagic have announced support for their devices as well. In terms of the design and exterior features of the camera, it sort of feels like the difference between an X-T4 and one of the GFX series. You have this large screen on the top, the physical buttons over here on the side, as well as your mode dial that has a lock on it. It has a deeper grip, making it easier to hold on to it. You have your memory card door for your CF Express Type B card and your SD card. Moving to the back of the camera, we have a fully articulating touchscreen, a new joystick, and you'll notice on the top back part of the camera that this thumb wheel is a little bit further out, easier to rotate. In addition to this camera being announced, Fujifilm also announced the 18 to 120mm. This 18 to 120mm f4 power zoom lens that also has weather resistance gives you a 35mm equivalent reach of about 27 to 183mm. So it has a power zoom function on the ring right here, as well as buttons that you can zoom in and out. On top of that, it's also internal zooming, so you're not going to have an element go further out and in. It's going to stay this size no matter how you're using it. Along with the announcement of the 18 to 120mm, we also have the announcement of the XF 150 to 600mm f5.6 to f8. This lens gives you a 35mm equivalent of about 229 to 914mm. This lens is also fully weather sealed and zooms internally. If you want to make these part of your kit, visit any of our physical locations or online at bedfords.com. My name is Tyler with Bedford Camera and Video, and we'll see you next time.